So, healing often asks us to look in two different directions at once, towards the depth of our inner world and towards the practical tools that help us live day to day. What if peace doesn't come from choosing between spirituality or psychology, but from allowing them to work together, gently guiding us back into wholeness? Welcome to Inner Peace, Better Health, where we explore the connection between emotional well being, inner calm, and the choices that support us in the healthier life. I am your host, Nazish, and today I am joined by Tori Jenae, a psychologist, healer, and a guide whose work is deeply rooted in lived experiences. Tori brings together psychological understanding and spiritual insight to help people heal nervous system, break unconscious patterns, and rebuild safety, self-worth, and trust within themselves. In this episode, we are exploring how spirituality and psychology work together and why integration, not separation, is often the key to lasting inner peace. So, welcome to the show, Tori.
Thank you so much, Nazish. Great to be here.
Wonderful. So, Tori, your work is shaped by both deep personal experiences and formal psychological training. I am curious, when did you realize that true healing required both inner spiritual work and psychological understanding?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I got very lucky. I wasn't raised in a home with spirituality at all. So my first introduction to spirituality was actually in college when I went to a yoga class. And I got very lucky that it was actually a really deep teacher who was a direct ascendant of Iyengar himself. So I got introduced to the Vedas very young, and that was my first introduction into healing the body through yoga. Then I started to understand through learning some Buddhism, learning some of the Vedas, like how important it was to actually heal the mind through those tools as well as the soul. So it's like I started to recognize young as a young psychology student that we really had to heal on all three levels: mind, body, and soul. And if you miss one of those, you miss the opportunity to heal at a very deep level. So psychologically, I have to work through things, my patterns, my beliefs, my childhood, all those kinds of things. But then spiritually, my soul comes in to learn and grow and change as well. So if I'm missing one of those aspects, I've just seen people always slip back into their old patterns that they don't understand, that I've got to heal at all three levels and integrate all three of those really well. But I had the early understanding of that, of like having done some of the psychological work, having started to learn some of the spirituality and seeing like, oh, I actually have to do both. And I see so many people only do one or the other.
Absolutely. That is such a beautiful realization that, it's like healing couldn't stay on the surface and it feels so important. Like when survival gives away to self understanding, something profound begins to shift.
Yes.
So,
I love to
mm,
think of like we can always be sicker on the inside at the spiritual level than we even are at the psychological level because of
I
the
agree.
yeah, like the ego and all those things have to be in control as well. Because I could say all the right things psychologically, but I love the saying that, like, God knows your heart. So it's
Absolutely.
like,
God knows the
am
best.
yeah, it's like, am I connected to something higher than myself? Do I trust my intuition? Am I listening to who I truly am at the core of my soul, not just, like, the psychological talk?
I agree. Many people see spirituality and psychology as separate or
Mm.
even opposing paths. From your perspective, where do we misunderstand when we try to keep these two worlds apart?
Yeah, I think this goes back a really long time, and I love that there's actually a story between the fathers of psychology, modern psychology. We have called Dr. Carl Jung, and then we have Dr. Freud, right? Those two actually got in a big fight over this. They had a 14-hour fight over the fact that Jung said that we are not healthy unless we include the spiritual side of ourselves. Freud said this is science and psychology, and we should have nothing. So they wanted to separate just like we do in American schools, the separation of church and state. But as
Hmm.
humans, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that has gotten lost from psychology. And so I feel like this is a very old fight, and we want to think that they're separate, but this is just how we treat the body as separate, right? You have to go see a doctor for for your foot, for your brain, for your ear, for your arm. We don't treat the body as a whole. We don't treat ourselves as a whole anymore. And they really say the same things. I love to give the example of like in the Vedas, for example, we would say that the ego is the part of ourself that is like the lower part, the negative part, the one that tells us not to do the right thing. But and then so in the Vedas, we would call that the ego or Maya, illusion. We have all these words for it, right? In Kabbalah, we would call it the they have all kinds of different words for it, but it's like actually Satan, like the devil. And then we have in psychology, we would call that the inner critic. So we're all talking about the same thing. We're just using, like, no one's denying this part of ourselves that has to be healed and managed. But for some reason, we've decided to separate these things. And I think this is what's happening in our culture is we've separated the soul from mental health so much that
Hmm.
this is a huge part of the problem because our purpose, who we are, how we're connected to other people, how we're connected to the divine is such a foundation of mental health, I believe.
Absolutely. And this is such a beautiful way to put it. What stands out is that how both paths are really speaking the same language, one through meaning and one through mechanism, and both pointing towards healing. That is
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful.
And what's amazing now is that so much of science has proven spirituality. For example, when we look at the meditating monk's brain and we can see different functional MRI, different waves turning on and off and different like we are taking all of these medical terminology, technologies and proving that spirituality, that the inner work, that breath work, that meditation, that all these things are actually how they help us in the body. So I really see them as like an integrated thing. But like I said, they just look at different parts of ourselves. And that's what most important is I have to heal on all levels.
I agree. And to this perspective that you have shared with us is so unique and so beautiful. I hope it is going to land with a lot of people who are listening in right now. So tell yeah, tell us, how does this mind spirit disconnect tend to show up in our everyday life, especially in relationships, self-worth or emotional regulation?
Yeah, I think that it shows up in our mind. It shows up in a multitude of ways. It can show up in like just common anxiety, always feel like you're not doing enough. So I see a lot with like feelings of perfectionism, not feeling like I'm enough, not feeling like I'm doing enough. Then self doubt is a big one I see. And then also the overreactiveness to, we all get triggered. That's normal. I always say triggers are our teachers. We have to see them and understand them. But when we lack that connection to ourselves, that emotional regulation, we overreact and then we actually end up creating more problems for ourselves. Like before I started meditating, I used to respond, overreact. Now I respond. It's a complete, but it's like because I grew up with a lot of trauma, a lot of intensity in my childhood home, I really did go searching the world from 3 degrees in psychology to every spirituality I could find on the planet, including 20 years looking at yoga, Ayurveda, Vedic astrology. Like I've studied it all. Now I'm into Kabbalah. Like I love really going deep into all of these things because I was looking for the answers to life's deepest questions. And what did I find? I've got to heal at the body level, which means I have to regulate my nervous system. I have to know how to breathe through things. I have to take a walk to calm myself down. I have to heal at the mental level, which means I need to understand my patterns, my programs, my childhood beliefs, the pain that my parents caused me, not to blame them, but to understand how it shows up in my current life, relationships, etc. And then I have to connect to my soul, my higher self, that part of me that will guide me, connect me to something greater than myself, because I believe that we all have a hole in our heart, and that hole is really the place for which I need to be connected to the divine or something greater than myself. That in which connects me to my purpose. And when I don't feel connected to my purpose, I see a lot of depression. And in the Vedas, the number one rule of life is dharma. You must be connected to your dharma, and that's the first like aim of the work. And I really see that with people when they feel lost, when they feel unsure, when they feel unhappy. Like I remember this in myself. I was about 30 years old. I had the car, the house, the husband, all the things, and I wasn't happy. It's because I wasn't actually living my purpose.
Absolutely, and that makes so much sense. To being to staying connected to your dharma, it actually makes a lot of sense. When nervous system feels unsafe, even love and connection can feel threatening. And in that phase, spirituality can go a long way and can help you in so many ways that you cannot even imagine.
Hmm. It's so true. It's the primary thing I think that we're all missing, and we don't even know it. And we've moved so far away from it as a culture. And I understand the negative sides of it that we needed to move away from, but we've missed the positive sides.
Exactly. So when people struggle emotionally or relationally, what deeper subconscious or nervous system patterns do you often see beneath the surface?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's often like a lack of safety and and deep worthiness. And I love to explain that differently. So safe means it's not safe to be seen, it's not safe to be known, it's not safe to be loved, someone will hurt me. Like there's so many things that we grow up with. And this is where like, from a psychological perspective, we look at attachment theory. Some people will push people away. Some people get really anxious and pull them in really close and they freak out over every text. And so we have different ways in which that shows up. And so again, we have to look at those psychologically. And then the other one is like, am I worthy of being loved? And if we didn't, it always goes back to the childhood, and then I also believe, like, the soul's lessons and that they're here to learn. So, in the childhood, it's like, what were relationships like growing up? I always have my clients do that. I even have my clients write out, like, a list of what is love is, relationships are, and just write as many words as they can think of over a couple days to start to see, like, what is it they truly believe that that means? Because sometimes we believe things like I see a lot, like, women particularly, they believe that love means sacrifice or or overgiving or overdoing, and then they feel exhausted all the time and resentful. So there's so many different patterns that I think the core that they all boil down to at the deepest level is like, am I safe and am I worthy?
Absolutely. And it is so powerful to name how much of our behavior isn't choice, it's protection. Awareness begins when compassion enters the picture.
Absolutely. That's a good way to say it.
So, for someone listening right now who feels overwhelmed or emotionally reactive, what's the gentle way for them to begin integrating psychological tools with spiritual grounding?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think the psychological tools is really like just even starting journaling and trying to understand, what do I feel when I'm reactive? What am I reacting to? When someone said that thing to me, what did it make me feel about myself? Did I feel like not smart enough, not, like I said the wrong thing, like I always hurt people's feelings. There's something there. So I always say, like, start with that awareness. I always kind of joke there's the ABCs of change. I have to start with the awareness. Then I can really start like calming myself down with like the breath, the beliefs. Like then I can start saying, okay, like when my partner said that to me, I felt this way. I was able to take a couple breaths or take a short walk or take a break, recognize that. Now I say, what do I believe about myself when that happens? Now I can start doing the change work, which is a lot of things, right? That's getting therapy, that's talking to a good friend, that is prayer, that is meditation, that is reading books. Like I always love to start with what is free so that people can do that easily. And I really believe that like just the simplest tools of journaling, meditating, and reading and really like what's one small thing you've learned that you can apply to yourself, but that self-understanding, that self-inquiry, even buying a journal that has, like, prompts in it that gives you ideas of where to go, will be so helpful in helping you uncover, like, where did I learn this? Why am I so reactive? Like, I grew up in a household where there was a lot of fighting, so that's just how I was wired in a way of, like, if someone says something to me, I have to defend myself and protect myself, and that was, like, a big thing I had to see, and I actually remember after meditating and journaling, doing all this different work, I remember the first time, like, my partner at the time said something to me, and normally I would have responded very harshly. I didn't say a word, and I actually sat with it for a day and thought, "Hmm, why did that bother me, and what do I need to say to him?" And I went back the next day very calm and said, like, "Hey, this hurt my feelings when you said that. What did you mean by it?" And it was a completely different conversation, but I'll never forget that was the first time in my life that I was ever able to do that. And that was, I mean, probably 15 years ago now, but it was definitely like a pivotal moment. And so I want people to have that understanding of themselves. And if you can find any space that you can pause before that reaction, that is where all your magic is.
Absolutely. That is such a beautiful way to put it, and I resonate so much with it. I feel like this is something so important for all of us to know, and that magical moment that you pointed right now, it is something that we often avoid. But just like you said, it is a magical moment. We pause there, and we know that you
Yeah.
it can go this way or that way.
And I love to say that like the work we do on ourselves is
Mhm.
so important, not because we have better relationships. We feel calmer. We feel better about ourselves. And I truly believe, because I'm part Native American, we kind of believe that the the healing we do on ourselves heals 7 generations before us and 7 generations after us. And so the work we do on ourselves not only helps our partnership and our families, but it also helps our children because we're not passing down those negative traits, beliefs, actions, etc., to them as well. So I love to like give people an extra bonus of why doing that work is so powerful.
I agree. And I appreciate how grounded that feels, like nothing forced, just creating safety and awareness where there once was none.
Yeah, and when we don't have it, which I definitely did not grow up with any, we have to cultivate it inside of ourselves first, and that's the probably the most difficult thing that we all do.
I agree. Healing is rarely linear. When old wounds resurface and the progress feels slow, how do you encourage people to stay patient and kind with themselves?
Yeah, it's really hard. And what's funny is I noticed, especially in my practice, that people don't see their results. I always have to remind them. So we forget that sometimes what we prayed for a year ago is already here because we've already set a new goal. We've already put something new that we want to create. And so I always say, like, write down something, each week that you feel like you did well so that you remember because you'll forget. And I really believe in like slow changes over time make a big difference when it comes to that. So if you get 1% better every week, at the end of the year, you're 50% better.
Well,
So noticing one thing you did, like, did I react better? Did I have a better conversation with someone? Did I handle that email better? Did I not react as much? Because if you start to see that you used to react, maybe something would upset you and that would take a week to get over. Then all of a sudden you notice that takes you maybe 3 days and then it takes you 3 hours. That's the growth.
I
It's
agree.
seeing that.
So, yes, and it sounds so beautiful, and it is such an important reminder for us that healing unfolds in layers, it brings so much relief. Growth doesn't rush, it ripens.
Ooh, yes, that's a good way to put it.
So, for our listeners, here is a reflection to sit with. What part of your healing might deepen if you allowed your spiritual wisdom and psychological understanding to support you? Inner peace emerges when insight meets compassion and when psychology explains our patterns and spirituality helps us soften towards them. Tori, for our listeners who resonate with your work and want to explore it further, where can they find you?
They can find me at my website, which is www.torijenae, so TORIJENAE.com, or they can connect with me on Instagram at tori.jenae.
Wonderful. So, I will make sure to include all these details into the show notes. And thank you for bringing such depth, clarity, and humanity into this conversation. It was an amazing time with you. And thank you for joining us on Inner Peace, Better Health. And dear listeners, if today's episode resonated, remember, healing doesn't ask you to choose between science and soul, it asks you to let them walk together. May you continue building the peace from inside out. Until next time, take gentle care.